How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Figure 4 Daily, July 11, 2018, figure4online.com/wrestlingobserver.com. Lance is joining us here today, replacing Filthy Tom, who is heading to first MLW, and then later, Crown Point, Indiana, July 14th. Tom and I, Rock and Roll Express, Saturday. Powerbomb.tv if you can't be there live. Very short John, I might add, from Chicago. So if you would like to go, there's a couple of tickets available. So head out there to blacklabelpro.ticketleap.com and get your tickets. Lance, what's going on today?
Not much, but I assume these are the biggest names you've ever been in the ring with. Rock and Roll Express are a pretty big deal.
Well, I mean, you, obviously. The legendary...
You wrestled, allegedly wrestled me. That was the ideal Canadian. But I would certainly put the Rock and Roll Express on a higher level than myself. They are, in fact, the greatest tag team of all time.
That's right.
Many times.
That's right. What about the legendary Street Fighter Tim Flowers?
I would put him below the Rock and Roll Express. Those guys were a pretty damn big deal in the 80s, I got to tell you.
How about Nasty Nate?
Who?
Okay. Well, let's get into the news here, Lance. I want to start off here. There's an update on Takahashi, who suffered a neck injury on Saturday at the G1 Special in San Francisco show. I was there live, obviously, did a lot of stuff this weekend with Dave. New Japan Pro Wrestling posted another update on his condition following the neck injury suffered at this past Saturday's G1 Special. New Japan noted that Takahashi was able to travel back to Japan today, where he will proceed with treatment. He had been hospitalized in San Francisco after Saturday's match against Dragon Lee at the Cow Palace, injured his neck towards the end of the match when a Phoenix Plex spot went wrong. He landed on his head as he was given the move. Match continued for a couple of minutes after that, ending when Takahashi hit the time bomb to retain the junior title. New Japan has yet to officially confirm Takahashi's exact injury. Dave Meltzer reported the original belief was that he had suffered a broken neck. They wrote on Monday Takahashi was undergoing a thorough evaluation, but was conscious and able to sit up and talk. Dave and I talked a little bit about this over the weekend. A lot about it, actually. I mean, there's a lot of issues here. The fact that it was a messed up spot. He wasn't supposed to land on his head. It was just something that happened. Obviously, he does land on his head a lot, and he's always got up from it and seemingly been okay afterwards. I know you have some strong thoughts on this, Lance, so Takahashi's neck.
Yeah, and again, not to talk too much specifically about him, because we don't know for sure what happened. And in any event, it's horrible. But I think the biggest issue, and again, obviously, we have to, I think, as an industry, start making things safer, but it's not as cut and dry as everybody wants it to be. It's, there has been pile drivers and DDTs forever, and you land on your head, quote unquote, but you don't really land on your head. And you can break your neck on a headlock takeover if things go really wrong. So it creates that issue of, okay, what do we say is too much and what isn't? And, this was a really ugly bump. I didn't see the match, but I saw the clip. But the thing that got me on the bump that really made me uncomfortable is, and it's not just this move, there's a lot of them now, where the guy taking the move is 1,000% in the hands of the other guy. There's no taking the bump yourself. There's no posting yourself where, if you DDT me, you can make it worse. But for the most part, I'm taking my own bump. I can post with my one elbow. There's things I can do to make it safer. But, this dude was cradled. His legs were in the air. His head was tucked in. And he can't help to rotate. He can't do anything. It is 100% in the hands of the other guy, and it only takes a slip or a mistake. And I think that's one of the big things we need to rein in are the attempt to create moves that look like you can't protect yourself, because there's something about trying to, it's the bump on the apron. Well, it's the hardest spot of the ring. Let's do that. It'll look like it hurts more. And I think we need to, it's the old veteran, old guy. I'll take a lot of bumps, but I'm taking my own. And I think we have to stop trying to create this'll look really dangerous. So even the people that know it's fake will think this really hurts, because it's getting too dangerous.
Well, it's not even so much that this will look really dangerous, but, I mean, same thing I was talking about on Monday, or whatever day it was. I've lost track of days. Regarding the apron spot, I mean, the apron is the hardest part of the ring, but the fans don't need to know that. You don't need to tell the fans that the apron is and it's not the hardest part of the ring, it just has less give than the middle of the ring. So I guess you could call it the hardest part of the ring, but you don't have to tell people that. You don't have to let people in on that and then start having to take bumps out there to prove to the people this is a more dangerous bump. Your goal is to create the illusion that you're beating up your opponent. And anything that you do where you're trying to not make it an illusion, you're trying to make it real so people believe more. I mean, that stuff should, I mean, you can't not do apron bumps anymore. I mean, it's just, the genie is out of the bottle, as they say, but it never should have started. And I think we can all learn a lesson from the taking a bump on the apron, that we don't necessarily need to find more dangerous ways to do things to try to get people more invested in our match. A good example is the Adam Cole bump a couple of takeovers ago, where they set up a chair, and he was going to take a bump onto the edge of the chair, not the flat part of the chair. Why? Well, because people have started to figure out that, you know, going through a table, the table breaks your fall. Going through the flat part of a chair, it's, you know, you're spreading out you're spreading out your weight, and so it's not as bad as if you take a bump on the edge of something, for example. So now we had a spot where he took a bump on the edge of something because everyone knows that hurts more. You don't have to do that kind of stuff. That's a road you don't want to go down. And as far as I'm not someone who thinks that moves should be banned, because I see a lot of moves that I know are safe. A lot of pile drivers, like a lot of times you'll see the reverse Frankensteiner, and a lot of fans freak out about that. But I mean, if you take a reverse Frankensteiner properly, you're sort of just doing a backward roll over a guy's body. Your head doesn't even touch the ground, even if you do it on the apron. It's not as bad as some people think. However, any move where you're gonna land on your head, like actually land on your head, and there's a lot of suplexes where guys are landing on their head, a lot of high angle bumps, those need to go. There should be no bumps where you land on your head. If you want to bump like a pile driver where you fake land on your head, that's fine. But the moves where you actually land on your head, there is no benefit to them, and it's just going to cause problems down the road for people.
Yes, and the moves that you fake land on your head, you need to be able to protect yourself, not counting 100% on the other guy doing it. You need to be in control of your own bumps. But, you know, we've been through this before. You know, when wrestling first, at least when I consider it, first came out of the closet, you know, at Montreal, when kayfabe really died, in my opinion, because both Brett and Vince went on national television and said, that wasn't the planned finish. We have to protect the business. And everybody really started going, it's fake, openly and admittedly on the show. It's sports entertainment. And ECW started to make a name for themselves off being so ungodly stiff. And this is when the unprotected chair shots started coming in. We're going to hit each other so damn hard with these chair shots, the fans will go, oh my God, that was real. And guys started jumping off of balconies because you're like, oh my God, this is the real stuff, because no one would be willing to do this to their bodies. And we've seen quite literally the string of bodies that created. And we're now like, we've got to ban these unprotected chair shots. We can't be murdering people in the head. Concussions are an issue, dementia, brain damage, CTE. And, you know, you remember the New Jack Vic Grimes bump because they kept jumping off higher and higher things. And New Jack almost died. I don't know if he permanently lost vision in his one eye, but he did for a while. And we realized that, okay, we can't jump off 50-foot scaffolds anymore. It's too dangerous. Let's not wait for the string of bodies to rack up so much before we learn that too many, you know, power bombs against the edge of the apron, you know, Spanish flies onto your head on, you know, steel girders. And it's like, let's just take a step back, take a breath and go, do we really need all of this? And I think you can still work hard, you can still do lots of moves, but let's not make the goal, this is going to look so dangerous, it'll be cool. Danger should not be the goal.
And hey, accidents happen, Lance, as you're well aware this week.
Yeah, if you follow Storm Wrestling Academy on Instagram, I think I shared it on Twitter as well. I'm not positive, but yeah, I got a big time hard way gaff in the top or back of my head this week, just in class. We're in like 9 weeks in now. And so we're doing class matches, and I was having matches with students. It was actually my fourth match of the day. And it's an age-old spot, where you send the person into the ropes, and you bend over for the backdrop, and they pull up short and punt you, and you stand up selling the kick.
Oh, no.
And yeah.
Let me guess. You were bent forward, he went for the kick, he crowded you, and when you stood up right into his teeth.
Yep.
Oh.
They didn't stop.
I didn't know that, everybody, by the way. Just the way you described it, I knew exactly what went wrong.
Yeah, and when I teach this, I encourage people to hang on to the rope. I hang them with one hand. When you hit the ropes, you hit with your right side against the rope. But if I'm doing the kick-up spot, I will always go flat back, grab the rope with my left, so I can kick with my right foot, and I hang on to the rope to stop myself. And this person forgot to hang on, crowded me, and then on the kick also bent forward. And so when I sold and threw my head up, I at first thought I got their chin. Like it was just bang and it hurt. And I heard teeth, but I thought maybe they just rattled their teeth together.
Sure.
So I'm holding the top of my head and they're laying on the ground holding their mouth. And I'm like, was that chin or teeth? And it's like teeth. And they moved their hand and I could see the missing tooth. And then when I saw that their one tooth was missing.
Was it in your head?
No, thankfully not. But that's what I asked because I wasn't bleeding at all that I could tell. I was just holding my head. And then when I realized there was a tooth missing, I went to whichever student was reffing and I'm like, is it in my head? And I've moved my hand. And once I let go, it just started bleeding because I've got the full, half circle of the dental records in my head. And the guy that was reffing actually was like, no, I saw it fly. And I'm like, where? And he's like, well, way over the other side of the ring. I'm like, what? And once I realized I was bleeding, I went in and got cleaned up and they found the tooth. So I'm like, all right, someone take them to the dentist. And thankfully they're from Calgary. So they actually had a dentist in town. And I'm like, there was one guy, it's like, yeah, I'll drive, I'll take. And I'm like, okay, cool. Make sure you take the tooth because sometimes they can put it in and save it. And it was getting near the end of the day. So we wrapped the class because I had to go get stitches. So I went off to get my head stitched up. They went off to the dentist. And the dentist did manage to put the tooth back in. It's back in. Hopefully, you don't know for sure how well it'll take. But they look completely normal. No fat lip, no bleeding at all. It was just teeth. And I've got a few stitches in my head, and it's a bit tender. But stuff happens. And they came back to class today, and they're like, as soon as I started getting too close, it's like, I knew I screwed it up. I knew this was going to go bad. And we watched it back on video. I put it in slow motion because I didn't want to watch it in real time. And you can actually see the tooth fly from one side of the ring all the way to the other.
Wow.
Yeah, it was some good impact. But when we watched all of the matches back, actually, there was, I'm trying to think. Yeah, it was another match. Because I had 4 matches that day, we basically did the same match 4 times, so I didn't have to remember 4 different ones. And one of the other students also didn't hold on to the rope and was leaning forward, and we watched it back. It's like, all right, that one missed by about 8 inches. And it's like, you can't bend forward over top of someone when you're kicking them up. It's not a good idea.
That I think that I don't want to harp on this because we spent like 20 minutes talking about it, but the whole point of Lance's story right there is that shit happens in wrestling. Like, who would have ever thought that a dude puts his head down for a backdrop? Like, I can imagine accidentally kicking the guy in the face, but that didn't happen here. Who could ever have imagined that somebody would just get a little too close on that spot and the guy taking the kick would stand up and his head would go into the other guy's tooth? But you know what? It happened because in wrestling, there is an inherent danger to it, even though it's fake. Real injuries happen on a regular basis. So there's no need to go out there and try to kill yourself because someday you are going to get hurt. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. Just on the craziness too, I won't name him, but someone who was recently on Observer Live with you that liked taking bumps on their head and bumps on the apron. I saw put a handful of thumbtacks in your mouth and take a super kick.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, you know how easy it would be to accidentally swallow a few thumbtacks? It's like, we don't need to do this. Do the old Memphis spot where you hide the invisible gimmick in your mouth and you choke on it, but you're not actually putting any of it in your mouth.
Yeah, madness. All right, let's move on to some other...
I'm assuming you won't be doing any of these dangerous
Are you absolutely out of your mind?
With the Rock and Roll Express.
No, this is going to be the very definition of take your own bump, this match on Saturday. By everybody. Because I ain't lifting anybody, I'll tell you that much right now.
I'm actually quite jealous. I never got to work with Ricky and Robert. I'd love to.
Oh, well, maybe someday, Lance. Maybe someday. All right, talking about this Roman Reigns, Bobby Lashley storyline, which is not lighting the world on fire on Raw, as the show did a record low rating this week. People are not into this show right now. What do you think about these guys? I like what they're doing, but apparently I'm in the minority.
I like what they're doing, but I don't really like the way they're doing it. This past Monday, it was the Michael Cole pitch where he talked about, at Extreme Rules, these two egos will collide. And I'm like, why are we promoting that these are two egotistical people? It's like, why not be these two badasses? These two tough guys are going to fight. And it reminded me I don't remember where, but it was a Jim Ross interview. Maybe it was his podcast. I don't know. But he talked about when he first started doing commentary that Bill Watts had told him there's certain adjectives you use for baby faces and there's certain adjectives you use for heels to paint them in the appropriate light. And technically both these guys are baby faces, but the thing you're hyping up most is unflattering characteristics. And I don't think that's the way to sell, Bobby Lashley, who looks like a beast, Roman, who also looks like a beast, and he's Samoan, which gives him even extra cred. And you can do the egos are colliding, but just don't say that's what it is. It's the competitiveness. Each one wants to be the top dog. Each one wants to prove he's the better man. These are competitive athletes. And, it was the Bobby Lashley promo when he cut his promo and did he came back and paused and looked at the camera and said, believe that. And there's something to that little bit of a personal dig. And personal issues sell, and two big dudes fighting sell. Now, it's not pulling ratings, as we saw, but I think that's more a casualty of too many hours and too many means by which to see it if I miss something important. I think with the summer coming, I think the ratings will continue to do poor, because if it's just nice out and I got something else to do, it's like, you missed a good Seth Rollins match. It's like, well, there's one of those every Monday. And if you miss something that's astronomical, there's always YouTube. There's, WWE.com or at WWE Twitter that'll post the link. So it doesn't feel like must-see TV. And there's going to be a good Seth Rollins match every single Monday. So if I miss this one, it's not that big of a deal. And I think that's what's hurting the ratings. But I do like this dynamic of Roman and Bobby, and I kind of wish it was being used to turn Roman heel, but I don't think that's the case.
Well, here's the thing with it that I like, since you mentioned turning him heel. I love the fact that you've got two tough, mean-looking, badass guys who want to kick each other's ass. You don't have Roman crying that he's being screwed. You don't have Roman out there losing every week and talking about the authority. You don't have Roman out there trying to pander to the people that are booing to him. Roman doesn't give a shit about the fans right now. All he cares about is Bobby Lashley. I mean, he didn't even talk about the championship on the show this past Monday, which I think, the fans that don't want him to be champion, I think that when you have Roman out there talking about the championship, it just makes him even more mad. When you have him out there just wanting to kick Lashley's ass, Lashley wants to kick his ass. They both want to kick each other's ass. They're cutting promos on each other. They're two mean guys. I like what they're doing here. And Roman got better reactions this week than he's gotten in a long time. I feel that you may not ever be able to make him the top babyface, okay? But you can get him cheered in a lot easier ways than they've attempted to get him cheered in the past. Have him go out there and be a Samoan ass kicker and beat the shit out of people and threaten to do it and then do it and get a fight with other big scary dudes. And I think he got something there. So we'll see where it goes. But to me, so far so good. The feedback that I got on our board from people that thought I was out of my mind for liking the show, a lot of it was, I just don't care about Roman, they said. I'm over Roman. Fine, I can totally buy that. In a lot of ways, I'm over Roman as well. I'm totally over Roman and Brock Lesnar. I never need to see that match again. They ruined that match when he didn't win at WrestleMania, and they kept going, and he didn't win. Like, I'm done with that match. If I never see it again, great. Brock goes to UFC with the title, great. I don't give a shit. I never want to see that match again. But doing something with Roman, something different. I like what they did with him. If you're sick of Roman, that's fine. But if you're not sick of him and you actually watch the segments he's doing with Bobby Lashley, they're both great in their role, and I think it's the best stuff they've done with Roman in a long time.
Yeah, and this doesn't feel as much like this is our new master plan to get you to cheer Roman. And it's sort of, I think, good in a way in that Bobby, until recently, I don't think has been firing all cylinders. I don't think the Sami Zayn program helped him at all.
Hell no. Although the obstacle course did.
Well, you realize he's actually one hell of an athlete.
Yeah. I honest to God think that when he did that obstacle course, there were people that turned the corner on him. Because they were like, holy fuck, this guy is a monster. Look at this guy. I mean, it was the more than he's done since he returned, I can tell you that much.
Yes, so I think because the crowd hadn't got fully behind Lashley, I think this program with Roman is kind of an interesting idea where, unless they just all tune out, which again I don't think is going to happen, you're going to have to pick someone. And if you pick Bobby, it's like, great, we get Bobby more over. And if for some reason you're down enough on Lashley that you pick Roman, it's like, well, great, then Roman's more over. And I'm a big fan, and I know you are too, of just two big dudes fighting. And do that. And I think Bobby Lashley, it's like Don Callis, my buddy Cyrus. He used to say when, it was probably during the time where, WWE's creative was not its best with me. And he always laughed. It's like, you're the easiest guy to book for. You just need to give you TV minutes to wrestle and you'll get over. And instead of, giving me dance segments or, a large penis, it's like, you just let him wrestle. And it's like, when you got a guy that looks like Bobby Lashley who can physically go, it's like, just put him out there and let him be the physical machine he is. And he's a good promo if you just let him be Bobby. He was a pretty good promo at the end in TNA. But when you get him out there talking about his sisters and other stuff, it's like, just let Bobby be Bobby.
All right, another topics we got here for today. I guess there was a caller on Observer Live. I wasn't around for this one. But I guess he suggested keeping stars in NXT. You wanted to talk about this. Tell me about the call, and for the others that may not have heard it, and what you're thinking about this.
Yeah, it was during the Solo Semp show, so when he gets a caller, he gets as much out of them as he can. And again, I like ribbing on Mike, but, doing a solo show, he does a hell of a job. But someone called up and said, with the track record of so many of these NXT stars getting called up and faltering on the main roster, do you like the idea of, especially because they've got the money coming with this new TV deal, of just paying the top NXT stars to stay in NXT so they can stay where they're most over? And I think Mike said he liked the idea. And I was screaming at my phone with, you dumbasses. And it would ruin NXT. Because the whole reason NXT is great is when Shinsuke Nakamura comes in, he gets built up, he gets into the title picture, he gets his run as champion, and then he goes away. And then the next guy comes in. And NXT is always fresh. NXT can elevate talent because talent goes away. If Kevin Owens and Shinsuke Nakamura and Adrian Neville and, we're all still here. It's like, what would the Undisputed Era be doing? And if, the AOP didn't get called up, what would be your tag team feud now? It's like, that's the biggest problem with the main event roster today. It's not that WWE doesn't know how to step up talent. It's to do that, you either have to step down or step out talent. And until your top guys leave, what the hell do you do? It's like, that's the saving grace in NXT. It's like we're getting the Shayna Baszler run right now because Asuka got called up, because Sasha got called up, because Charlotte got called up. If Charlotte and Becky and Sasha and Asuka were all still in NXT, oh, great, they'd be in these great programs. It's like, well, yeah, but what would Kairi Sane be doing? What would, Shayna Baszler be doing? That's the whole joy of NXT, is that fresh roster.
Well, an easier way to look at it is to look at what people complain about when they talk about the main roster. They'll talk about how it's so stale. We see the same things over and over again. I mean, that is exactly what NXT would be if you never brought anybody up, if you just left them down there. I mean, maybe the guy's argument was, if they're super over, leave them there, but if they're not so over, bring them up and try them out on the main roster. But then, there's so much more money to be made on the main roster. You're asking your talent to not get over because they want to get called up to the main roster. I mean, if anything, the simple solution to all of this is call everybody up. Some of them are going to get over on the main roster. Some of them aren't. There's also going to be some guys that are on the main roster that have been there for a while that are in fact stale. Send those guys back down. Mix some of those guys from the main roster back into NXT. Actually make it a third brand. It'll be mostly developmental guys and new stars. But if a guy just is doing nothing on that main roster, send him down there for a while. Have him help the guys out. Put him into some storylines. They've done it before with guys and it's worked out great.
Yeah, and there's the possibility that, if the UK brand actually takes off, you might be able to rotate some people around. It's the same dilemma that ECW had. And they dumped a lot of it on Paul with, he ran out of, the creative juices that he had when ECW first started. But when ECW was in his heyday, he had his core guys. He had Shane, he had Sabu, he had Taz, he had Rob Van Dam. But everybody else rotated through. He brought Eddie and Dean and Benoit in, and they got over. They had great matches. They put over one of those other four guys, and they went away. And then Chris Jericho came in and got over and had good matches and put two or three of those guys over and went away. It wasn't until ECW got big enough that guys wanted to stay, or the TNN deal where they had to sign guys to long-term contracts. And then it became creatively more difficult because you couldn't just, feature the eliminators and bring in tag teams and have them beat them. That was the plus of the old territory system. How many times have you heard the interviews with Bruno Sammartino? And I still listen to them. His interviews are still the best. But when he was champ for 11 years, they'd bring in Stan Hansen. They'd fire him up and get him hot for 4 or 5 weeks. Then they'd do, the 3-loop program and all the big markets, and then Stan would go away. We bring in the next guy, and he'd bring guys in for, 3 to 6 months. You heat them up. You feed them to your top guys, and it worked great in the territory system. Unfortunately, with the current television model in WWE, it doesn't work as well. But NXT, it's like, don't mess with it. If you like it, just let it be fresh and let them rotate through.
Hey, here's another one for you. I just got back from a hellish time at the airport. I've been away from home with the exception of one day for 9 straight days. And I'm ready to stay home for a while. Now, granted, I got to leave again on Saturday, but it's only for 24 hours. But think about these guys that are on the road. They're on the road 4 days a week, every single week. And when they get home, half of that day is a travel day. And then before they leave, half of that day is practically a travel day. So they're on the road all the time. So there's less money to be made when you're down there on the NXT roster as compared to the main roster. But you know what? If you've been on the main roster for a while and you've been making a lot of money and you're not an idiot and you've saved your money, I don't know if it would be the worst thing in the world for some of those guys to move off the main roster for 6 months, and if they live in Florida, just be at home for a while. and go there for a couple of NXT tapings, but spend the rest of the time at home, recharge your batteries, get off the road for a while, spend some time with your kids, do some good for NXT, and in 6 months you get called back up to the main roster. What the hell's wrong with that?
No, you could absolutely do that. And that's it too with these new television deals. Maybe when you're on the road full time, say you're making $500,000 a year. I'm just making numbers up. They could afford to still pay you 3 or 4 while you're down in NXT. You know what I mean? They do have the money. And, I think Dolph Ziggler a while back, I think he just got pulled off TV, and I think he actually asked for it.
He asked her. Yeah, he asked to just be off TV for a while.
Yeah, you're
Didn't
not
do a
doing
damn bit of good, but he asked for it.
But, I think that's a good idea, because if he's still making the towns, you can still pay him. He's still keeping sharp. He's doing house shows, and house shows are not nearly as stressful as TV. House shows are the fun. But if he's not on TV for 4 or 5 months, it is a chance to be fresh when you come back. And hopefully, especially if the creative team was behind it, it's like spend the next 4 weeks, 4 months, whatever it is, coming up with a fresh creative direction for Dolph Ziggler, and he can still work house shows. He can, again, do a trip down to NXT 1 week and have the people benefit from being around Dolph for a while. I think it's a good idea. It's just you got to compensate guys financially because it's just not what you're used to.
All right, hey. Other topics here today. We've got, actually before we get to the Retro Nitros, Asuka and Ellsworth. I have not watched this week's SmackDown yet, so I don't know what they did in the Lumberjack match. I'm going to try and watch it tonight. But Shark Cage match has been signed for the pay-per-view on Sunday, the famous Shark Cage match. Thoughts on all of this?
I haven't seen the most recent SmackDown segment with theirs yet, but I've hated this since they've started it. And it goes back, and I've harped on this before, and I will again, the intergender issue. It's like Ellsworth is back, and they did the one match where, again, they will let Asuka hit him, but he's not hitting her. And, he's claiming he can beat up any woman, but to me, it's demeaning to the women. You want to either just keep them separate, women wrestle in their division, men wrestle in theirs, or you have to treat them as absolute straight-up equals. And it's like, if it's okay for Asuka to do a spinning back fist to him, and he's not allowed to do it to her, then you're saying that the women are the weaker sex. And you're undermining all of your women's evolution, or revolution, whatever one it is.
Well, hold on. Let me jump in here for a second. So, number one, they've got sponsors, and I don't think their sponsors want to watch men beating up women. That was the doom of Lucha Underground. So, if you're going to do something like what they're doing here, they've never said James Ellsworth is not allowed to touch Asuka. All they've said is that he has to get into the ring with her for a match, and they've never told you there are any specific rules for one or the other. You as a viewer just watch James Ellsworth, and he's just, I don't know what the proper word would be. He's I don't want to use impotent in this particular, but anyway, the point is he can't do anything. He sucks. In storyline, he's terrible. And so Asuka kicks his ass, and everything that he tries fails. He's trying to give her a spinning back fist. He's trying to kick her ass, but he can't.
But most fans know why he can't. And then I would also go you the other route. It's like, he is incompetent, I think is the word you were looking for.
Incompetent, a nincompoop.
But when Asuka is having a match and you're building towards a match with her and the most incompetent male in WWE, what does that say? Other than the women aren't that good, they're fighting this doofus.
Well, no.
I think you're disrespecting the women.
He's fighting this doofus because this doofus keeps getting involved. And the idea is he keeps interfering on behalf of who he believes is his woman, who I guess is not his woman. And so you as a fan are just begging for Asuka to kick this guy's ass, and they're giving it to you.
Yeah, but I think the smart people that know that he's not allowed to hit her, it's women are the weaker sex, and it feels wrong. They, even before this match, they did I don't know if it was leading to the mixed match challenge or what, but there was the one segment on SmackDown, I think, where Lana went over and smacked one of the Usos. And it's like, it creates that uncomfortable moment where she was the heel, she was wrong smacking him in the face, and the instant reaction is, oh, he needs to do that back to her, but then you don't really want to see it because a dude punching a woman in the face or smacking her face still looks and feels wrong, and it always will feel wrong to me, even if you want to go, well, it's not about gender, it's all about equality. If she punches him in the face, he gets to punch her in the face, and it's like, I don't think that's a road we want to go down. In UFC, we didn't have, even though guys like to speculate, could Ronda beat some of the dudes? We don't put her in the ring with dudes. She's just going to wrestle women. And I think WWE needs to stick to that because it creates a bad situation. I didn't mind it as much back in the, Missy Hyatt, Jim Cornette days, because Jim Cornette was never a wrestler.
Well, I mean, James Ellsworth is barely a wrestler.
But I just think you take the least credible guy on the roster and he's feuding with the women. It makes the women seem
because he's asking for it.
But just
it's not like they booked
the women's division is booked around this incompetent nincompoop undermines the credibility of the women's division.
Well, I mean, you could argue that if you want to. I mean, the very first women's Money in the Bank, I mean, he won. So, yeah, that was pretty stupid. But I think that maybe you're overthinking the rest of this thing here.
No, the focus of the women's division should not be an incompetent man. He shouldn't have won Money in the Bank. I complained about it when it happened. And if you want the women to be credible, give them credible programs and angles and have them do the matches they can. And I think having them do silly matches with a guy makes it worse. It makes the SmackDown women's title all about the Gaga. And it's like, that shouldn't be there. AJ Styles' program isn't about Gaga and stupidness.
What are you talking about? This program sucks. AJ Nakamura, are you kidding me?
But it wasn't about
built around their balls.
Gaga.
I knocked Lance off the air.
I'm back.
Okay. It was built around their balls.
But in a real fight, you can kick someone in the balls. It's like in this real women's division, I don't want this clown running in. And again, I'm more than happy for him. He grabs the brass ring every time they put it near him, and he manages to get a job. God bless him. But it's not, to me, it's going back to that Divas era that they badmouth and say that they've evolved and revolved past. And it doesn't help, and it just needs to go away and move on.
All right, let's talk about this retro Nitro, this interesting take you have on it.
Yeah, it's something that I noticed last week, and then I noticed again this week, that, again, Eric is back on the announce desk a lot, and they're in that angle that never works. I know we've completely lost our ground, and we're the shits here, but we're going to right this ship. But I think it's amazing in that Eric Bischoff was in charge, Kevin Nash and Hogan and others, booked and helped steer the ship, down the toilet. But the big complaint from all of those that know what's what is, the top guys holding down the other guys. The cruiserweight division's catching on. These guys that are really talented aren't getting their push. And I think it's amazing that Eric Bischoff has now made it in storyline that it's Flair's fault. It's like Flair won the president of the company, and now Bischoff, the angle is, oh my God, Flair should have passed the torch. Flair's got his thumb. He's holding guys down. WCW sucked the last couple of years, but we're turning it around. This Flair guy's ruining it. And I just think it's hilarious because for quite a while now, the Flair segments are quite often the best stuff on the show, and the really bad, NWO stuff and the shenanigans behind much of the finger poke of doom and all the other crap that we've been putting up with it's like they've managed to turn that into Flair's fault in storyline. Like Bischoff is the innocent bystander trying to save this company from this rotten Flair guy who kept everybody down. And I'm like, this is a hell of a spin.
It's not even that. Bischoff goes on commentary and he says, the company's had some rough times and we were number one. Now we're not, but goddamn it, we're going to be number one again. And as soon as he says that, it's like, okay, so what does that mean? Like, you're in charge? Are you in charge, Eric Bischoff? If you're in charge, why the fuck aren't you doing anything about this? Why aren't you going out there and getting rid of Flair as president and installing a babyface commissioner or whatever? Why aren't you making decisions? Why aren't you doing anything if you say we're going to turn this around? If you're not in charge, why are you coming out here and saying that this company's going to get turned around? How the fuck do you know? You don't have any power. If that's what if the storyline is you have no power, how can you come out here and tell us that as viewers? Ric Flair, the heel, is in charge. Roddy Piper, a crazy man's the commissioner or whatever. Like, why are you out here telling us this? The show sucks every week. Stupid shit happens every week. You're sitting there at the commentary booth complaining about it. It doesn't make any sense one way or the other. That's my problem with it.
Oh, I agree, but I just think it's funny that he's managed to turn it into... It's the angle, but it's like it's all Flair's fault. Like Flair's the one that's been holding people down. Like this week, Sting came out and did the promo about how Flair's been holding guys like him and Luger down since the 80s. And I'm like, Flair made you guys. It's like, are you kidding me? It's like there's so many times where, again, we've seen the Sting and Luger winning the titles and then get completely kneecapped by, Hogan or Nash or the NWO. And, Flair, when Brett came in, Flair and Brett had a great program, pulled a great rating. And it's like they kneecapped both of those guys. And they put Flair in an insane asylum. And he managed to make that halfway entertaining somehow. And it's like Flair's now president. And they're blaming all of this on him. It's just like, that's amazing.
Yeah, the show sucks. You were busy working. You didn't get a chance to watch it during its peak.
No, but I'm living through it now. And I mentioned this on Twitter, and it's like, props to Booker T. It's like through all of this, he just always works hard and has good matches. And he's, every week over the past 4 years now, almost, we've been doing this. It's like, he was just half a Harlem Heat, a good tag team. And then he was like, a really great tag team and got his tag team title run. And then they split up him and his brother. And he started having good mid-card matches, and he's feuding for, the TV or the U.S. title. And it's like, creative's going to get worse and worse as we move forward. And Booker T just keeps plowing ahead, having good matches and working hard. And he's going to get that top spot. And he really is that, rose in a garden of just the most piles of shit and weeds that he just kept working hard and doing well. And it's like, man, I got a lot of respect for Booker and the journey that he managed to survive. But the other thing I'm interested, because we're getting close to the Russo jump. Like sometime by, late this year, it's going to happen.
I think it's October.
Pardon?
I think it's October, late September, early October.
So we've only got a couple more months, and it'll be really curious if all of a sudden, because, we watch Retro Raws and there's like, okay, Austin's amazing. Rock is now officially a gigantic superstar. And Vince is still the greatest character to ever live. But there's so much shit on that show. And I'm really curious if when Vince Russo leaves, does all the bad stuff get better? And then all of that badness will then go to WCW and then the divide will just become insurmountable.
Well, I know that the bad goes to WCW. I can tell you that much. But like when I wrote Death of WCW, I concentrated on WCW. I didn't really concentrate on WWF. So when I go through the Retro Raw Nitro, like literally this is the first time I'm looking back on WWF since I watched it the first time 19 years ago. It's very, very eye-opening to me. So I know that when Russo goes to WCW, it's a disaster. I don't remember. I know that the ratings continued to grow in WWE after he left. It's not like he left and things tanked. I mean, they continued going up through 2000, 2001. But I don't remember, the quality of the shows. I know that, obviously when the Radicals jump, the show quality takes a big leap. But it will be interesting to see how things go with WWF when he leaves. Like, is the mid-card going to be focused? Because it's sure as shit not focused right now.
Yeah, it'll be curious because everyone credited him with having, everybody had an angle. And that's always been his defenders. Like even Jericho said he had good experiences with Russo because it's like he always had, he came to all the undercard guys trying to give them angles. And, this week you pointed out that great Shane Stephanie angle where he accidentally elbowed her in the head and knocked her out. It's like you didn't even remember it because too many people had angles.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning with injuries. Like, you shouldn't be working matches for the other wrestlers. You should be working matches for the fans. Like, the wrestlers know what's dangerous and not dangerous. You don't need to be doing bumps on the apron because the other wrestlers know. You're wrestling for each other when you do that. You're not wrestling for the fans. It's cool and all. I understand being a wrestler and wanting something to do and wanting to be a star. And I understand liking the fact that Vince Russo came to you and tried to give you and everybody else something. But the reality is, when you try to make everybody something, everything gets lost in the shuffle. And you actually don't make stars. You have this thing on the WWE undercard where there's 9 million things happening. And like everybody's doing something, but nobody's doing anything all that memorable. Nobody's really getting over to any real degree. And a lot of stuff that should get over isn't getting over because there's too much stuff going on. So it sucks for the wrestlers, but like for business reasons, you can't try to make everybody a star.
Nope. And Steve Austin and Rock were the stars. My God.
Sure were.
It's crazy. Like everybody yeah, they were over. They were big stars, but it's like you go back and watch and it's like, holy crap, they were over.
Let's get some plugs in here.
Alrighty. Storm Wrestling Academy. And again, as is proof by the wound on my head, I am an in-the-ring, hands-on trainer. 3 sessions a year. Pardon?
Heads on.
Yep. Heads-on trainer. Yeah.
He's the head trainer.
Yeah. Very funny, Brian. Really good. Anyway, yeah, 3 sessions a year, 12 weeks each. You can go to stormwrestling.com for the info on the school. Sign up early because it does book up. And you can follow Storm Wrestling Academy on Instagram. I post some videos and some photos from classes each week. I've got Chris Knight, a former student of mine that comes in to help with demonstrations and stuff 2 days a week. And he does most of the photos and videos for me. He's getting quite artistic and good. And you can always follow me at Lance Storm on Twitter. If you're interested in still supporting Killing the Town on Podcast One, I'm no longer a part of it, but Cyrus and Paul Lazenby are every Tuesday on Podcast One. I'll throw them a plug. And that's about all I've got going on at the moment.
Do you still update the main website, or is that kind of a thing of the past?
To be honest, it's kind of a thing of the past. It's like anything new I'm doing is pretty much just on Twitter and or Instagram. The website and commentaries are pretty much a thing of the past. There's a lot of photos and stuff from my old career there if you want to go back and check that out. But I haven't actually wrote anything new on my website in a while.
I just remember I've been plugging it for so many years, I didn't even stop to think if you were actually still updating the actual website part. But there are 2 websites there if you want to check out some stuff from Lance's career, some commentaries, and some photos, and all sorts of good stuff. That's up at stormwrestling.com. And then obviously the link to the school website if you want to become a pro wrestler. Lots of guys heading through NXT and the WWE main roster and gals have trained with Lance. And many of the... Tyler Breeze was on Raw this past Monday. The Iconics are on every Thursday. Some of the tag team title match from the last NXT TakeOver, Lance Storm students were in that match. So all sorts of different people have gone through the school. So if you want to be a wrestler, and Dave has sent many people to your school as well, Lance, when they ask, where should we go? He often suggests the Storm Wrestling Academy. So check it out, stormwrestling.com. Lance may be here next week as well, because I think Filthy is gone for 2 weeks, so I'll try to finagle him into another appearance here. And Filthy will be back in 2 weeks. He's on MLW this week, obviously Crown Point on Saturday, so you can check him out there. And thanks, Lance, for doing the show. And, of course, thanks, everybody, for listening. We will talk to you again after a while.